Iran and Israel have new politicians in town. The U.S. is trying to install an anti-Israel, pro-Hamas leader in Jerusalem. The question is, can Israel stand up to this extreme international pressure? All this and much more right here on the Joshua and Caleb Report.
In a world plagued with anti-Israel propaganda, Paul Yavel presents the Joshua and Caleb Report, a positive voice of truth straight from Israel's heartland.
In a world of negativity and fake news, every Christian should be connected to the life and positivity that Israel brings to the world. I'm Luke Hilton, here with Joshua Waller. This is the Joshua and Caleb Report, and we're coming to you from the biblical heartland of Israel, where we are fired up and ready to call out the stupidity in the world, if I'm allowed to use that word, Josh. It
You're
just
allowed.
seems like there is some very foggy outlooks amongst the politicians of the world, especially maybe the ones that should be considered like clear-headed, and we'll get into all that. But we got Iran, we got Israel, both new governments, and we also got the U.S. government trying to work with both countries. The three of them should not go together, but they are kind of trying to work together, and it's not going to be a good outcome. We're going to get into all that and how it's all connected. If you've not subscribed on the YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell button, hit the like button. Don't hit the unlike button. I mean, you can if you have to. But leave us a comment. Love to hear from you.
Luke, we got to thank our new Patreon supporters and those that have supported us on other platforms as well.
right.
We got to thank Lev and Spencer Montgomery, an old friend. Thanks for jumping on and joining the team here. Really, from the bottom of our hearts. This is what really pushes us forward, and we're thankful for all you guys joining
And
us.
if you want to join the team, you can go to patreon.com/Joshua and Caleb. By the way, some people have reached out to us and said, we want to support you guys, but not on Patreon. We now have another platform. It's our own website. It's joshuaandcaleb.com. And you can click on the donate button right there at the top of the page. We have one-time and monthly ways to support the show, and that goes directly to support the work. It's actually, we get a little bit better of a percentage and rate on our website than we do Patreon. So either way, links are down in the description below, joshuaandcaleb.com, and you can also get all the rest of our content that's up there. Josh, we put out another video that was not our norm for the YouTube channel this week, but that is because we're part of a volunteer humanitarian organization here in Israel that provides help to farmers. We bring Christians from all over the world to work in the agriculture. We're talking about grape harvest, pruning vineyards, planting trees, and we have a fundraising video on the channel to do all of that. Make sure you check it out. You don't want to miss it. If you want to support our work in Israel, you can go to the link that's down in the description below for that, as well as the video that we put out on the channel a couple of days ago.
Luke, I think a lot of people are really confused right now. What in the world's going on in Israel? As you mentioned already, we have this ridiculous scene happening between America and Iran. What in the world? But
And
now,
Israel.
And now
Yeah.
we've got
well, they've
Israel.
just thrown it into the mix here.
Exactly, because now we have this really wild government, and we got to talk about it. We hesitated to talk about it. Now it's actually happened, and that's why we hesitated to talk about it, because it was such an unsure situation.
We also didn't know what the policies of the new government were going to be either. Now we know, sort of, maybe.
So let's clear it up.
Yeah. Okay. You've probably heard about Israel's new government. If you are wondering what in the world it is, what are their policies, who are the leaders, here's a quick breakdown, okay? Are you ready? Naftali Bennett is the prime minister of the new government for the next 2 years. A full term of the prime minister in Israel is 4 years. Naftali Bennett is going to be prime minister for the first 2 years, and then a man named Yair Lapid is going to take over for the second 2 years of the term. Yes, you can actually do that here in Israel, although it hasn't ever happened. It was supposed to happen with Netanyahu and Benny Gantz. The government fell apart before Benny Gantz could even become prime minister. Okay, Naftali Bennett, head of the Yamina party. They got 6 seats in the last election. That's also a little bit mind-blowing. And they are a religious right-wing party, although some people are accusing them of abandoning the right and going after the left and center blocks here in Israel. Here's why. When the formation of the government coalition was announced, left-wing supporters took to the streets rejoicing. A lot of right-wingers kind of got depressed and went into mourning. Why would that be when a right-wing person is going to become prime minister? Here's the breakdown, okay? Bennett is head of the Yamina party. He only has 6 seats out of 120 in the Knesset. And there's only, of the other parties that have similar values to him, that only makes up at most 20% of the new coalition of the government, right? Yair Lapid represents more like 75% of the rest of the coalition. He's more center, left wing, so people consider him. And by the way, some of this is coming from Caroline Glick, an amazing journalist and very good source when it comes to politics here in Israel. So this is obviously some of her opinion. We got some of our opinion in here as well. So you got Bennett, who is prime minister, really only representing like 20% of the government. Yair Lapid, more of a center to center left politician, representing more like 75%, who is going to be prime minister in 2 years, if all goes well. And then you have Mansour Abbas, which is the Islamist Arab party head called Ra'am, which they have 4 seats, and they are part of the coalition as well. And they obviously represent far, far left in the government, okay? Couple more things is that, so already you have a very interesting government made up from right wing all the way to left wing, even with an Islamist Arab party that maybe doesn't even hardly believe in Israel's right to exist, or definitely not thrive. If one of them just decides, or 2 of them decides to leave the coalition, the whole government falls apart. One of their members of Ram actually, when they voted to form the new government, he abstained, okay? So not a very good sign for the start of the new government, right? Now, we move over to Bibi Netanyahu, who just left after 13 years. He literally is holding the support of like more than 50% of Israel's voters, because Israel's voters voted for right-wing parties, which is like Likud and the ultra-Orthodox parties, Bezalel Smotrich, which is like the kind of the settlement, very conservative party. But then they also voted for Yamina and even Gideon Saar's party. So and that makes up more than 50%. The problem is they all refuse to sit together, so no government can be formed. You end up having this very mixed, something you could call it a uni government being formed, which leaves things in a very sticky situation, because Naftali Bennett, even though he's prime minister, some people are saying he's a prisoner of the left because he's a right-wing prime minister, representing a very small fraction of right-wingers in the government, where the rest are left-wing.
So good look. That's a fantastic synopsis of what's going on. But basically, they all united in one effort to get Bibi Netanyahu out of the government and form their own coalition. So
correct.
That's what we have. We have a very, it's unstable. Right. Maybe there's some good people in there. At most of the right was very excited about Naftali Bennett becoming prime minister back in the day. They wanted, it would be great to have a prime minister, but the situation here is that, as you said, 75% of the government are made up of leftists that actually have not been in the government for a long time.
Well, this is the first time in history that an Arab party has been in the government as well, been in the coalition.
So, Luke, we just have to mention that. There's an Arab party in the government of Israel that doesn't believe that Israel should exist. Like, its members really, they actually are pro-Hamas and pro-PA.
Yeah, and I want to get into that. Just a few statements that Mansour Abbas, who's the head of this Ram party, has said. But first, I want to talk about Yair Lapid, because he's a big player.
He's number 2.
Everybody's looking at Naftali Bennett. Well, he's equal to Naftali Bennett. He is alternate prime minister and foreign minister, which is literally like the 2 most important roles besides prime minister.
It's a big deal.
Okay? His top 3 goals in this new government. Are you ready for it?
Yeah.
Rebuild Israel's ties with the Democratic Party in the United States, because he's foreign minister right now. So obviously he's focused on foreign policy. He wants to rebuild ties and relationship with the United States progressive Jewish community, and he wants to rebuild ties with the European Union. Okay, just hold that in the back of your mind for a second.
How you gonna do that? Yeah.
So in regards to Iran, Yair Lapid also said that the return to the 2015 JCPOA nuclear agreement is basically inevitable. And he said Israel needs to just prepare for the inevitable. He's also said that, Israel cannot allow Iran to get nuclear weapons, so he's strong on that. But he's kind of, his goals and ideals are not based in reality. Regarding Iran, he told foreign ministry officials who attended his inauguration speech, Israel will prevent in every way necessary the possibility that Iran will attain nuclear weapons. Yet he's also saying Iran's going to return to the 2015 deal. And so he's saying, what are we going to do about this? He's not a very strong position, right? Now, in a 2018 speech, Yair Lapid claimed that the Palestinian issue, are the axis around which all other regional issues rotate, specifically Iran. Okay, so keeping with this view, he thinks Israel needs to make concessions to the Palestinians so that the United States will support Israel's policy on dealing with Iran. Okay, in his words, I believe that a breakthrough on the Iranian issue depends on the Palestinian issue. We need to work to advance a diplomatic agreement with the Palestinians only as part of a regional discussion. Okay, if you're still with me, this is all going to come together. Are you ready for this?
Ready.
His 3 goals: rebuild relationship with the Democrats, progressive American Jews, and the European Union. That being said, those 3 organizations are all 100% pro-Palestinian state, correct? And he also says that Israel needs to make concessions to the Palestinians, which, if he's going to make those 2 issues go hand in hand, Yair Lapid has to support the creation of a Palestinian state. Not good news, especially when he's foreign minister and is going to be prime minister. By the way, if the new government cannot pass a budget, then Yair Lapid's going to become prime minister a lot sooner. Yeah. Basically, he was so worried that the government would fall apart before he had a chance to become prime minister, they put a clause in their agreements that said he would have to be installed as prime minister if things started falling apart. So he's going to get his chance.
So basically what we have is our world scene right now. We have America pushing to go back to the Iran deal with Iran. Iran's on the brink of a bomb, if not already has enough to create a bomb. Israel understands that Iran literally is the biggest threat on the in the field of threats. Yair Lapid understands that, and he's willing to make concessions on the back over here with this little puppet players over here called the Palestinians and surrounding Israel to appease America to go into which. Okay, Luke, to break this, America is an ally to Israel, not to Iran.
No, and that's what's so weird about this. It's like an unholy triangle or something. It's really weird, and it gets even stranger.
Because it has infiltrated into Israel. That's what's really gets crazy. Because we have Iran sympathizers, basically, inside the government of Israel. Basically, Mansour Abbas
on a political
level would clap to see Iran succeed.
You want to hear quotes by him? Let's see. And I was just going to say too, rockets being shot from Gaza by Hamas into Israel are coming from Iran.
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally
so
connected.
Iran, Hamas, operating in Israel, all the same thing. Okay, Mansour Abbas, the Ra'am Islamist party that's now in the coalition government, when he, at the inauguration, he gave a speech in Arabic. Always listen out when an Arab leader gives a speech in English and Arabic, they're always different. Okay,
yeah.
Just don't know that.
Don't think that they're just copying it over.
100%.
Yeah. Just so
in Arabic, he said, "We will restore the lands that were stolen from our people." Which lands?
Right.
Well, in 2018, he made another speech and he said, quote, "Since 1948, the Palestinian people have lived in a continuous disaster that was created by Zionist terror gangs." And basically, part of it being an Islamist party, they have to believe that
You're
Israel
saying he
belongs
calls
to
the
them.
IDF Zionist terror gangs? Is that what he's directing his attack at?
Correct.
I mean, you could figure that that's what he's actually
100%
saying.
correct. We'll be right back with the rest of the show, but first I wanted to tell you about our new book. It's called Facing Jerusalem. You know, Christianity is in trouble. Every day our faith is attacked and often watered down. Those who are zealous for their faith are few in number, or they're not willing to speak up. A lot of young people are even leaving the faith of their childhood to chase the dream of this world. If we look carefully at the Bible, we find that God gives us hope through an ancient prayer. This prayer unlocks the door to forgiveness and God's favor in our lives. It all goes back to the dedication of the temple in Jerusalem when Solomon prayed for the nations. Solomon prayed for you. Many times when Christianity is seeking repentance and revival today, however, the key ingredient is left out, and it's facing Jerusalem. I was privileged to co-author this book, Facing Jerusalem, along with Zach Waller. Filled with our personal stories, this book paints a beautiful picture of how all believers should care about and recognize Jerusalem's key role in the redemption of the world. Solomon asked God to answer the prayer of those from the nations that look toward and face Jerusalem. Is this prayer still relevant today? Purchase our book at facingjerusalemthebook.com or click the link in the description below. You can even enter the promo code Joshua and Caleb for a special listener-only discount. Order your copy today and experience God's plan of redemption and blessing in your life. Just go to facingjerusalemthebook.com or click the link in the description below. Now, you probably heard about the flag parade that happened in Jerusalem. It was supposed to happen a while ago, but then that's when the whole war with Gaza started. And it's for some reason, Jews marching through Jerusalem with Israeli flags to celebrate their nation, it just angers the entire world. Mansour Abbas said, quote, "The flag parade in Jerusalem today is an unbridled provocation. Its main characteristics is hateful shouts and incitement of violence in an effort to inflame the region for political purposes." Guess what I saw, Josh? I wish I would have remembered it. We could have shown it on the show. After the flag parade, outside of Damascus Gate, in the little square there, there's video of the local Palestinians coming out with bleach and mops saying we have to cleanse the area of the Zionists that were here, cleaning the whole area because they were so upset that Jews dared to walk on the stones there. Okay?
That's unbelievable.
That tells you where people stand. Mansour Abbas has also repeatedly denied Jewish history in Jerusalem. He's denied a Jewish temple ever stood on the Temple Mount. Okay, so even though he sounds really sweet and moderate now, he looks like a really nice guy too, by the way.
He does.
His picture. Even though he said it's a more recent stance, okay, that he's taken. He's changed his language to sound like a really moderate kind of guy.
Yeah, so he's saying, Luke, basically, let's boil this down. He's saying that nations should not be so arrogant as to parade their state flags in their capitals. That's unbridled provocation.
Why should nations be so bold as to have politicians in your government that are against your nation?
Yeah.
Although we probably shouldn't be talking too much because the United States is starting to go down a similar path, but we won't get into that.
But Luke, the main point is that there's other nations don't accept that at all. If you go to Washington, D.C. right now, there's American flags proudly throughout Washington, D.C. It's called patriotism. People are patriotic.
Yes, you're allowed to be, encouraged. You should be patriotic for your country.
Yeah. So what they're saying is that what they're going deeper, Luke. It's not that they don't think that countries should do this. They're saying that Jerusalem is not Jewish. They're saying that what he's really saying is that Jerusalem is not the capital of the Jewish state, that it will be, and you see quotes about this as well, he says it will be the capital of the Palestinian state. This is their go-to lines. They're saying Jerusalem will be our eternal capital, right? Correct. They're copying Israel. No, Jerusalem has been the capital of Israel since the time of King David. You open your Bible, there's actually historic history here. Mansour Abbas, sorry. Jerusalem's not going to be the capital of Palestine.
Can't believe it. Yeah. Speaking of the United States, okay, time to bring them into this unholy triangle. President Biden, Joe Biden, has now decided that they want to appoint the Assistant Secretary of State for Israel and the Palestinians, I didn't know there was such a title, as the U.S. Consul General to the Palestinians in Jerusalem. Okay.
Which Trump closed.
That's what I was going to say. A couple problems with this. Trump closed that.
Thank God.
Underneath the Jerusalem Embassy Act of 1996. Closed the consulate to the Palestinians. Moved the embassy to Jerusalem, declared Jerusalem the capital. Under the Vienna Convention, the U.S. must ask Israel to permit the opening of the consulate and allow the head of the mission. Okay, so that's step number one. Israel actually has to give them permission to open this consulate, which they probably will be nervous to say no to, right? Because they depend on America.
Yair Lapid,
but we have to talk about who this guy is. Okay, his name is Hadi Amir. He's so far been the Assistant Secretary of State for Israel and the Palestinians, and Biden wants to appoint him as the Consul General to the Palestinians in Jerusalem.
So who would you appoint if you wanted to appoint a consul general? It seemed like you'd point somebody kind of middle lane, like.
Well, it's like an ambassador kind of type of person, right?
He is going to be in charge of the Palestinians' issues and
so maybe
stuff like this. So
maybe it fits his position. Yeah. Who is he? Hadi Amir. Before joining the State Department of the United States, he was a fellow at the Qatar-funded Brookings Institution, and from that institution, he wrote and spoke in favor of legitimizing the Iranian-sponsored Muslim Brotherhood, and he's a big advocate for the U.S. to integrate Hamas into the PLO and basically to legitimize Hamas so that they're not a terrorist organization before. It gets worse. Hold on. Here's some quotes. He says, quote, right after 9/11 in 2001, quote, I was inspired by the Palestinian Intifada. Discussing his work as the national coordinator of the anti-Israel Middle East Justice Network. Okay, number one, what are you doing working as the national coordinator for the anti-Israel Middle East Justice Network? And what in the world are you doing saying I was inspired by the Palestinian Intifada? In other words, I'm inspired by suicide bombers, terrorists, and those who murder Jews. That is who this guy is.
And I want to get Hamas, I'm wanting to get Hamas more affiliated and work together and get that a little bit more
we don't want to call them murderers anymore. We don't want to call them terrorists anymore. We don't want to call them suicide bombers
I saw
anymore.
where he wrote books, Luke, trying to introduce better so Americans could better understand these Arabs and understand where they're coming from better. The idea, Luke, this is what I want to say. This guy has obviously been talking to Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken.
Right.
When I heard Anthony Blinken say that he wanted to introduce PA to his leadership in Hamas, Gaza,
right.
I thought, what in the world? That is ridiculous. That's so far from anything. That's so far-fetched. Well, this guy's the reason.
Yeah.
And that's going to take some serious work, and actually, it's pretty. It's
he has accused Israel of ethnic cleansing. He's coordinated an organization that's accused Israel of apartheid. I mean, it hardly gets any worse, really.
Yeah.
What I want to know is how is this guy working in the U.S. government? He needs, again, urges negotiations with Hamas. When the Donald Trump's peace plan came out, he wrote an article saying it should be scrapped in favoring of focusing on a deal with Hamas. Okay, we just need to understand the poor little murderers better.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
We should not call them terrorists. If we would negotiate with them, if we'd legitimize them, and maybe they would be better people.
You know, look, this is what I was saying. Sorry to Hadi Amir, but there's better people for the job, number one. And number two, Israel denies access to people like him.
Well, I hope they do.
And I hope they don't let him in the country.
New government. Okay, and this is how it's all tying together, guys. We got one more facet here, and then this whole thing comes full circle. Okay, we have to move on to the third country in the unholy triangle. Did I make that up, or is that a good term? I
have no idea, Luke.
So
we could just be so much trouble right now. You wouldn't believe it, but okay.
Have you ever heard of the Butcher of Tehran?
Yeah, lately.
Okay, 1988, Ibrahim Raisi has been accused by the international community for a direct role in the executions of more than 30,000 people in Iran. Mm-hmm. Okay. Probably a bad guy. A lot of people are calling for him to stand trial for his crimes. Do you think maybe the International Criminal Court should look into something like that?
No, they're too busy looking at Israel.
Very extremist figure. Also reports coming out, too, about more recent roles. He's a judge. He's a high-ranking judge in Iran. Of more recent reports about executions in Iran and tortures and just horrible things, right? Well, guess what new position he's taking in Iran?
Yeah, president.
The president. Yeah. Iran had elections which were not fair and legitimate elections. And
it's about like the PA having elections here, Luke.
Yeah, they also just kind of got rid of the candidates. Not got rid of as in killing them. Maybe. I mean, hopefully not. But they said if they thought somebody was a threat to the elections, they just said you can't run. And I guess this guy was the only legitimate guy. Or illegitimate, and he was voted in as president.
Look, you saying like they don't have Facebook? They can't just kick you off Facebook.
They don't have Facebook in Iran, actually.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying like in America, if you just get like they just take you off Facebook. You can't work anymore. In Iran, it's a little bit more like serious. They don't just take you off.
Kill you.
No, they okay, this guy's like disappeared. What happened to him? I don't know. Like,
right.
Okay, this is the Iranian version of I don't like you. You can't run in politics anymore.
Right.
This is what butchers do, and this is the president of Iran right now. You know, he looks like a really sweet guy.
He does, actually. If you see his photo, we have hopefully his photo up on the screen. I was saying we could call him Grandpa Butcher, but
that's crazy, Luke.
No, I don't know why I'm laughing. No, it's horrible. And that now Iran that is racing toward a nuclear weapon. They might already have a nuclear weapon.
Talk about that in a second.
And the United States is negotiating with them. I just heard they finished their 6th round of talks with Iran. The United States.
Yeah.
Even though the Iranians won't talk to them, they have to stay in a different hotel and they send messengers or letters back and forth or something like that. Right. He got elected. He already said, I refused to meet with Joe Biden. Then Joe Biden said, well, I wasn't going to meet with him. Anyways, This guy is a bad guy. Now, to be clear, the supreme leader in Iran still has ultimate control. So Ibrahim Raisi is the new president, taking office in August, and Ayatollah Khamenei is the supreme leader. But he's like 82 years old, and this guy could be the next in line to be supreme leader. Right. So very bad guy.
And he's the most radical. Make this clear, Luke. He's the most radical that Iran has ever, Israel has ever encountered too. He is a radical, and the world has to understand that he's radical. Right. More radical than any of his predecessors.
Even though they're calling him conservative, some people call him ultra-conservative. Absolutely not true. Don't let his looks deceive you. And by the way, Iran might have nuclear weapons, or at least have them very, very soon, right?
Look, we've got the JCPOA allowed them to enrich uranium to 3.67. So today, obviously that's not in working anymore, but today they have they're enriching up to 63%. They allowed them 300 kilograms to enrich 300 kilograms, and today they're almost 3,000 kilograms. So it's gone out of the roof. Like what their enrichment, they're totally blown it out of the water. They're totally gone against the JCPOA.
Right.
They've totally disregarded any, and this is international. This is not just America. Right. They disregarded like a lot of countries when they blatantly disagreed and went on a different path. When they disagreed with those signed agreements, they signed the JCPOA. Right. So this is huge, and literally we're at the brink of a bomb.
And America is trying to return to the 2015 deal. For some reason, they think if Iran will just re-enter into this deal, then maybe they'll just get rid of 59 point whatever % of their uranium that they've already enriched,
right,
and stop trying to get a bomb.
Now that they've elected the most extreme leader they've ever had.
Not working.
No.
Not working. Absolutely not. Okay, guys, time to bring it all together. And by the way, and even though I was joking about this unholy triangle, it's like what is so weird about it is you have Israel, the only democracy in the Middle East, amazing, the Jewish people, amazing country, standing for what is right, standing for truth, kind of thing. You have Iran, evil, 100% evil, who has vowed to destroy Israel and also destroy America, by the way.
Yeah.
And then you have America, who is supposed to be a republic democracy, right, but whose values are also slipping away. And you have all of these three kind of pressuring, basically America pressuring Israel and Iran trying to destroy Israel at the same time by sneaking rockets in and supporting Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood and Hezbollah kind of thing. So here's how it comes all together. Israel's new government is very shaky. It's only actually like 20% right wing. The less is left. The rest of their government is literally center to left wing, with including an Islamist party who really doesn't believe in Israel's right to exist, if that's what you bring it down to.
And if those Islamists threaten to pull out, the whole government crumbles,
collapses,
and the head is literally powerless. He can't make decisions without that 5%.
And his alternate prime minister and foreign minister, his goals are to reestablish ties with EU, Democrats, progressive American Jews, which is basically moving towards the creation of a Palestinian state. And at the same time, this very fragile government is trying to stand up to the United States pressure, with a anti-Israel, Hamas person trying to come in and be the head of a Palestinian consulate that doesn't even exist in Jerusalem, trying to stand up to that pressure, and also stand up to the pressure of the United States entering back into the 2015 deal in Iran, which could very well bring them nuclear weapons when you have a new president that is a butcher. 100% butcher. So that is how all of this ties together in such a really very strange way, and who knows what could happen.
Luke, all of this to say, we do have the first ever religious right-wing prime minister. We've talked about what follows him, which
that's
is
why
scary.
Hopefully you saw the picture. He's got a kippah on his head. That's first in Israel's history.
He believes in God.
First in Israel's
history. He is an
history.
amazing man. We've actually had our organization has met with him before. An incredible guy, but he stands at the head, and we've just explained. And he pray for Israel like you never prayed for Israel before. Israel needs the strength.
They do, yeah. His policies have historically always been good. Like we said, his hands are probably going to be mostly tied. A lot of people feel like he's betrayed, the right, but he is still a good guy, and we hope that. And also, there's a lot of really good, strong conservative people in key positions in the government. So that's the good news, because we always try to end on good news, right? But like you said,
Israel needs our support more than ever.
it's your job to continue praying for the peace of Jerusalem. Guys, source links for today's show in the description below. Go check it out. Let us know what you think in the comments. In the meantime, be strong, be courageous, and be the voice of Joshua and Caleb in your generation.
I believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I believe.
Hi guys, if you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We also have tons more incredible content straight from Israel's heartland, which you can find completely free at joshuaandcaleb.com. If you're interested in signing up for a life-changing volunteer program in Israel, you can go to serveisrael.com. We host Christians from all over the world to help plant trees, harvest grapes, prune vines, basically help farmers all over Judea and Samaria, all while experiencing the land and people of Israel in a way that you're never going to get on a day tour. Just go to serveisrael.com to find out more information.
Stand. Yes, I will stand.